The next beer we're going to be tasting today is in our hoppy category of beers. This one happens to be an IPA. When we take a look at it, we do see a bit of a haze. It's you know, a little bit kind of an orangey looking beer, you know, golden into orange. The haze comes primarily from the hops. It leaves a lot of polyphenols, proteins in there that create a haze and increases the mouthfeel a little bit. So I'd say slightly hazy, gold to orange in color. Love watching those bubbles come up and form the head. Now that is a whole bunch of aroma. We've got all kinds of great hop aromatics in there. Grapefruit, tangerine, moving into tropical fruits. Get a little bit of the malt bill in there, just a little bit of graininess, but not a whole lot. And then just really bursting with flavor that is primarily based around the hop flavors. Again, those citrusy, grapefruit type of flavors. Very sharp on my palate, but very flavorful, very fruity. Goes well with the malt backbone of this beer, which is just a little bit of caramel malt in there with the pale malt. We can show you, we would have, you know, a whole bunch of this, which is our pale malt, the very base, the white flour of beer. And we've got just a little handful of the caramel malt in there just to give it this light color. It's a little bit darker, a little bit more color than we had with our lightest beer. And so it's varying proportions of caramel and base malt. So I find this beer fairly balanced, but certainly and balanced for the style, which is to say it's not overly bitter like many IPAs can be. Focuses mostly on the flavor and the aroma from the hops, although there's a nice balancing bitterness in there as well that goes great with the malt profile in this beer. I can feel the residual hops on my palate, back where we talked about picking up those bitter flavors on the back of our tongue. Certainly that pops out there. And boy, it just makes me thirsty for more. I don't know about how you feel about it, but I'm gonna have just another sip. Hoppy beer at rock bottom. Drink it with all your friends. Now we're gonna move into the wheat beer category. And as I mentioned before, we have seasonal wheat beers that rotate around in our restaurants. So in this situation, we're tasting the white ale. Now the white ale is interesting because it's one of these beers that gets a lot of character and flavor from the yeast that's in it. And we can see how cloudy that is. That's the yeast in there. But additionally, we add orange peel and coriander to this beer to help work with and complement those yeast flavors and to bring a real nice crispness and fruitiness to the beer. So when we take a look at this beer, we do see that it's significantly cloudy. Now, if this were the light beer that we tried earlier, that Kolsch, this would be unacceptable. This is not cool, right? Don't send this out to a guest. Talk to the brewer, there's something wrong. But in this case, it's perfectly acceptable and part of the style, much like you would see in a Hefeweizen or another beer like that. So we see that color. The color is accentuated a little bit or made to seem darker by the fact that that yeast is in suspension, so it's a little bit more opaque. I can't really see through that beer because of that yeast load, but the color is still very, very light if we were trying to isolate just the color, and that's because of the types of malts that are in there. So if I give myself a nice little swirl here, cap up for that aroma. I get a lot of aromatics from the coriander and the yeast, the spiciness that comes from those, a little bit of a white pepper kind of aroma from the coriander. I do get the fruitiness of the yeast and the orange peel as well. Great flavors, just as I described the aromas really, although the coriander sharpness is not as sharp when I'm taking a drink, and it kind of melds with the orange peel and the character of spiciness and cloviness from the yeast to make a really nice, fruity. It's very effervescent. It's got a great mouthfeel because of those bubbles. These types of beers are generally carbonated a little bit more highly just to accentuate the flavor and to excite your palate a little bit more to get these great light fruit flavors that come from this beer. When we're talking about the materials that go in to make this beer, it does use wheat. Usually 40 to 50% of the grain bill is wheat. And then our good old silo base malt, or the white flour of beer, combine to make this color along with the yeast. Not much hop character in this beer, just a little light touch of hops just to give a little balancing bitterness, but it's really not noticeable with all the other stuff going on. You would really focus more on the yeast flavors and that orange and coriander that go in there. Great beer. Just like all of our other wheat beers, I would recommend that if the guest is asking for fruit, or if you're enjoying the beer with fruit yourself and you would recommend it to a guest, that we serve that fruit on the side and give the guest the option. Enjoy your wheat beers, people.